curiosity question I would have for you is how you see changes in the type of people who would write papers, the style. I mean, when I go back to the older issues, it's astounding to me that some of them are almost conversational. It's like, on my weekend camping trip, I happened to visit Morenci, and here's my description of it. And so there's been clearly vast changes. You've overseen a lot of that.
Yeah, well, I actually started turning down those papers. There was an encouragement. It had been encouraged by Irving. Bateman continued it. You know, there was that era when people went out and looked at the deposit for the first time, and maybe they're the only geologists who are going to look at this thing, because the next thing that's going to happen is that they recommended that somebody invests, or some company invests money in it, and the mining engineers take over. And so in a lot of those cases you're talking about, Larry, that's about the only geological description we have in a sort of a 50-year period. And so, but the pattern has changed, of course. Afterward, actually, there was a lot more of that before about 1920 than after 1920. It continued on through the 30s, but it was more prevalent before 1920. And the reason for that is that after World War I, professional economic geologists started to become a real profession. It's what led to the founding of the society. I mean, if you think of before World War I and up through World War I, economic geology was all survey people. There were very few professionals who made their living in this field. After World War I, there were more and more and more professionals, and the big mining companies initially hired them as consultants and then started hiring them as employees. And those guys, of course, would spend long times in these deposits. So you start getting really detailed discussions of the deposits, descriptions of deposits. By the time you get to the 1930s, there's some classics. Survey guys who would write a professional paper and also write a little paper in economic geology, for economic geology, usually which was sort of a description added to an evaluation of sort of the whole field of coal mining, say, or the importance of mining for barite. You know, they would comment on how it fitted into the economy, but there was always a scientific core. But that really dies out. That dies out by the mid-20s.